So I'm sitting in my office yesterday going through my notes for the show when my phone rings. It's one of my Capitol Hill contacts, and the first thing he says is, "Jimmy, you're not going to believe what just happened. Trump just threw Mike Johnson under the bus." And I'm thinking, wait, what? Mike Johnson, the guy who's been Trump's most loyal soldier for years? The speaker who defended him through everything? Well, turns out that's exactly what happened. And what I learned over the next few hours was one of the most shocking displays of political abandonment I've ever witnessed in my career, covering this absolute circus we call Washington. Here's the thing. Mike Johnson wasn't just some random Republican who occasionally supported Trump. This guy was the definition of perfect loyalty. We're talking about someone who stood by Trump through every single controversy, every legal challenge, every late-night Twitter meltdown that made the rest of us question reality. Johnson defended Trump when other Republicans were running for the hills. He backed him during the classified documents investigation. He supported him through multiple impeachment proceedings. He even defended him after January 6th, when half the Republican Party was ready to cut ties completely. This wasn't fair weather support or strategic alignment. This was total, unwavering, ride-or-die loyalty. Johnson basically turned himself into Trump's personal spokesman in Congress, defending positions that sometimes made zero sense just because they came from his guy. And Trump just dumped him like a bad stock pick. I've been in this business long enough to see a lot of political betrayals, but this one is different. Usually when politicians turn on each other, there's some kind of policy disagreement or strategic difference that provides cover for the breakup. We just had different visions for the direction of the party, they'll say, or it was time for new leadership. But there's no cover story here. Johnson didn't betray Trump. He didn't leak damaging information or vote against him on crucial legislation. He didn't even hint at disloyalty in private conversations that somehow became public. His only crime was trying to do his actual job as Speaker of the House, which occasionally required him to work with Democrats to keep the government functioning. And apparently, in Trump's world, keeping the government functioning is a betrayal worthy of complete abandonment. The specific incident that triggered Trump's fury was Johnson's attempt to negotiate a deal to end the government shutdown. Federal workers were going without paychecks, essential services were being disrupted, and the economic costs were mounting every day. So Johnson did what any responsible leader would do. He started talking to Democrats about finding a compromise that could get the government back up and running. He didn't abandon Republican priorities or cave to Democratic demands. He just acknowledged that in a divided government, you sometimes have to negotiate to get things done. For this act of basic governance, Trump publicly called Johnson's approach reckless and suggested he was failing in his duties as Speaker. Not privately, not through back channels, but in public statements that completely undermined Johnson's authority and made him look weak to his own caucus. It's like watching someone get fired from their job, not for poor performance, but for being too good at their job. Johnson's sin was competence. His mistake was remembering that he's supposed to serve the American people, not just one man's ego. What makes this abandonment even more shocking is how recently Trump was praising Johnson. Just a few months ago, he was calling him one of the best speakers we've ever had and a true conservative fighter. Johnson was Trump's golden boy, the reliable ally who could be counted on to deliver whatever Trump needed from Congress. But the moment Johnson showed even a hint of independence, even the slightest suggestion that he might prioritize governing over loyalty tests, Trump turned on him faster than a late-night Twitter user abandoning a controversial take. And the Republican reaction has been absolutely stunning to watch. These are people who've spent years following Trump's lead, accepting his version of events, even when it contradicted obvious reality. They've defended him, enabled him, and made excuses for him through scandal after scandal. But watching him destroy Mike Johnson, someone they all knew was genuinely loyal, seems to have broken something in their minds. You can see it in their interviews, hear it in their private conversations that somehow become public. They're genuinely shocked that Trump would treat his most faithful ally this way. It's like they're finally realizing that loyalty to Trump is a one-way street. You can give him everything, your credibility, your principles, your political future, and he'll still throw you away the moment it becomes convenient. One Republican congressman, speaking anonymously because apparently even criticism requires anonymity now, said, "If Trump can do this to Mike Johnson, none of us are safe." Another called it a wake-up call about what we've been enabling. Yet the really devastating part is that Johnson saw this coming and tried to prevent it. According to my sources, he reached out to Trump multiple times trying to explain his position on the shutdown negotiations. He wasn't going rogue or pursuing his own agenda. He was trying to fulfill his constitutional responsibilities while keeping Trump's support. But Trump wasn't interested in explanations or context. He wanted absolute obedience, and anything less than that was treated as betrayal. Johnson's attempts to maintain both his loyalty to Trump and his duties as Speaker were seen as evidence that he couldn't be trusted. It's the political equivalent of an abusive relationship. No matter how much you give, it's never enough. No matter how loyal you are, you're always one perceived slight away from being cast aside. And the victim keeps thinking that if they just try harder, if they just prove their devotion more completely, they can avoid the inevitable abandonment. Johnson spent years building his entire political identity around supporting Trump. He sacrificed relationships with Democrats who might have been willing to work with him. He alienated moderate Republicans who thought he was too willing to enable Trump's worst impulses. He burned bridges all over Washington because he believed Trump would have his back. And now he's learning what every other Trump ally eventually learns, that loyalty means nothing to someone who views every relationship as transactional. The timing of this abandonment makes it even more cruel. Johnson is facing one of the most difficult challenges any speaker has dealt with in decades. He's trying to manage a narrow Republican majority, deal with competing factions within his own party, and navigate the complexities of a divided government. These are the moments when you need support from your allies, when you need people who have your back, even when things get tough. Instead, Johnson got a public humiliation from the person he'd been most loyal to. And it's not just politically damaging, it's personally devastating. Johnson genuinely believed in his relationship with Trump. He thought they were partners in advancing conservative principles. He saw himself as Trump's faithful lieutenant, someone who could be trusted with important responsibilities. To discover that Trump viewed him as just another disposable tool, someone to be discarded the moment he became inconvenient, has to be crushing on a personal level. But here's what really gets me. This abandonment reveals something fundamental about how Trump operates that should terrify every Republican who's still supporting him. If he can treat Mike Johnson this way, someone who gave him everything, what do you think he'll do to Republicans who are less loyal, less useful, or less politically secure? The message to every Republican in Congress is clear. Your loyalty means nothing. Your service means nothing. Your political sacrifice means nothing. You exist solely to serve Trump's immediate needs. And the moment you can't deliver exactly what he wants, you're gone. This isn't just bad for Johnson or even bad for the Republican Party. This is bad for democracy. When political leaders are too afraid to govern responsibly because they might lose the support of one man, the entire system breaks down. Johnson's real crime wasn't disloyalty. It was remembering that he has responsibilities beyond keeping Trump happy. He tried to balance his role as a Trump supporter with his duties as speaker, and Trump made it clear that such balance is unacceptable. The government shutdown that triggered this whole crisis is still ongoing, by the way. While Trump was busy destroying Johnson's political future, federal workers were still going without paychecks. Essential services were still being disrupted. The economic costs were still mounting. But those real-world consequences apparently matter less than Trump's ego. Johnson's attempt to address a genuine crisis affecting millions of Americans was treated as a betrayal requiring immediate punishment. And now Johnson is in an impossible position. He can't govern effectively without occasionally working with Democrats, but working with Democrats is apparently grounds for political execution. He can't serve the American people without sometimes disagreeing with Trump. But disagreeing with Trump means losing all support. It's a no-win situation that reveals the fundamental incompatibility between Trump's demands and responsible governance. You can be a Trump loyalist or you can be an effective speaker, but apparently you can't be both. The Republican Party's reaction to this abandonment has been fascinating to watch. Some are rallying to Johnson's defense, finally recognizing that Trump's treatment of allies is becoming a liability. Others are staying silent, probably calculating whether defending Johnson is worth risking their own relationship with Trump. But a few are starting to ask the uncomfortable questions that should have been asked years ago. If Trump can do this to Mike Johnson, what does that say about the kind of leader he is? If loyalty doesn't protect you from arbitrary punishment, what kind of party are we building? These are the questions that could finally start to crack Trump's hold on the Republican Party, not because of external criticism or media pressure, but because Republicans are witnessing firsthand how Trump treats the people who serve him most faithfully. Johnson's abandonment is particularly shocking because it happened so publicly and so cruelly. Trump didn't just withdraw his support quietly or signal his displeasure through intermediaries. He humiliated Johnson in front of the entire political world, making it impossible for other Republicans to pretend this was just a private disagreement. The message was intentionally clear. This is what happens to anyone who prioritizes anything, even basic governmental function, over absolute loyalty to Trump. It's meant to intimidate other Republicans into complete submission, to make them afraid of ever showing the slightest independence. And unfortunately, it might work. The Republicans who are shocked by Johnson's treatment might also be terrified of receiving the same treatment themselves. They might decide that the safest course is total obedience, even if it means abandoning their responsibilities to their constituents and their country. I keep thinking about what this means for anyone considering a career in Republican politics. Why would you work for someone who treats his most loyal allies this way? Why sacrifice your principles for someone who will abandon you the moment you show independence? The really tragic part is that Johnson genuinely thought he was doing the right thing. He was trying to prevent a constitutional crisis while maintaining his loyalty to Trump. Instead, he learned that there's no middle ground in Trump's world. You're either completely obedient or you're an enemy. I've been talking to people around Washington, and the shock is real. Even Trump's harshest critics are surprised by how quickly and brutally he turned on Johnson. One Democratic congressman told me, "I disagree with Johnson on almost everything, but I respected his loyalty." To watch Trump destroy him for trying to keep the government running is just sad. The broader implications are staggering. If Republicans can't trust Trump to support them when they're governing responsibly, how can they function as a political party? We're creating a system where Republican politicians are more afraid of Trump than their own constituents. But there's another possibility that Johnson's abandonment finally wakes up enough Republicans to the reality of what they've been enabling, that they realize a leader who treats his most loyal allies this way isn't someone worth following, that they decide their own dignity and effectiveness matter more than avoiding Trump's wrath. The next few weeks will tell us which direction the Republican Party chooses. Will they rally around Johnson and send a message that basic governance can't be treated as betrayal? Or will they abandon him too, proving that Trump's control over the party is absolute? Either way, the damage is already done. Trump has shown once again that loyalty is a one-way street in his world, that no amount of service or sacrifice will protect you if you ever prioritize anything else over his immediate desires. Mike Johnson learned this lesson the hard way, just like Jeff Sessions, Bill Barr, Mike Pence, and countless others before him. The only question now is whether the rest of the Republican Party is finally ready to learn it too. Because if they don't, they'll keep enabling a system where good governance is punished and blind obedience is the only virtue that matters. And that's not a political party, and that's a cult of personality that has no place in a democratic system. Johnson's abandonment after years of perfect loyalty isn't just shocking. It's a warning about what American politics becomes when one person's ego matters more than the institutions that serve us all.